Hello, my name is Jonathan King, Kaiser University. My presentation today will be over enterprise architecture in the public sector. For those who may not be familiar with enterprise architecture, it is the system for planning, implementing, executing, and analyzing all enterprise or business activities. The two terms business and enterprise are interchangeable. However, in the public sector, the commonplace idea is that the architecture or way of operating is inferior to private sector, more inefficient, more costly, and slower to provide deliverables to consumers, which would be us, taxpayer. My goal in my paper is to explore options for improving the system, creating an e-government type system where we take the principles from enterprise architecture and transfer them over into the public sector. For the public sector analysis, you have to look at the metrics that they are using to determine success. Public sector enterprise is usually defined as task or object oriented. They'll create a department for certain tasks. Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Police Department, Fire Department, so on and so forth. Many segmented organizations. Centralizing those organizations to create a one-stop shop for customers has been done in other countries and regions such as Europe and some places in Southeast Asia. They've created a centralized e-government site. Our own government has dabbled into this and started to adopt these principles, but on a federal, national level for strategic purposes. The metrics that we should be using would be standardization, having information and data that can flow between different public sector organizations, workflow support, interoperability, and strategic considerations. IT governance and improving new technology and adapting that into what we do should be a primary focus of this, not necessarily to provide new technology for the sake of technology, but to allow technology to assist with our public sector goals. For e-government architecture, one of the most prominent examples would be the Canadian healthcare system. They've connected over 50 separate private government and social service organizations and websites and combined them into one central Canada Service website. This is the antithesis to the Affordable Care Act implementation that we had in the United States. The Affordable Care Act implementation was not done with standardization interoperability that was politically supported. It was pushed through, which resulted in public sector interruptions of service, which are not acceptable. And in fact, interruptions in public sector services hit harder than in private sector and are reasons for entire program dismissals. In Southeast Asia, there have been some pretty significant failures. Considering failures is the programs were not politically supported. When implemented, they were implemented in a population that did not understand them nor could use them. Many of the population were not computer literate, so the e-government framework was wasted on most of the population. It was tied to incentives that were dependent on deliverables for technology. Those technological deliverables did not actually provide a benefit to the consumer or the taxpayer, solely to the private business owner working for the government contractor. And finally, there was a significant amount of nepotism and political corruption that resulted in a lot of waste and money being siphoned out from those aforementioned processes. In conclusion, while there are many different facets to this, enterprise architecture has the ability to translate into public sector, but not so much as a direct one-for-one transition, but more of a framework for the large organization in a top-down fashion towards strategic
strategic benefits would outweigh and hopefully go down into the lower things so they can speak to each other and communicate. Thank you for my presentation.